if Trump loses and can't manage to mobilize on a scale that would allow him to steal the election, do we think that Trumpism is dead, or do we think they might get stronger?
Well, first of all, Trumpism is far from dead, and I'll get back to that in a second. But to think that Trumpism could be dead would be a really dangerous idea for the left. But on first, what you're talking about the Republican establishment, yeah, it's actually really crazy to see. I mean, we always said that the ruling class didn't like Trump. They preferred the kind of pre-Trump, quote unquote, stability, which of course for working class people like ourselves is not stability. It's still crisis, that we always face. But from the ruling class's point of view, that's how they see it. But now you have, Chris Christie coming out and saying, Don, just count the votes, guy. Like you have, Donald Trump calling up Rupert Murdoch, the CEO of Fox News, saying, hey, why'd you call, Arizona for Biden? What the hell, man? And Rupert Murdoch is being like, dude, just count the votes, calm down. You have Mitch McConnell saying, hey, we're going to count the votes, like calm down. And you have Twitter, banning Trump's tweets, making people not being able to, to be able to retweet his tweets. And so I think you do see that the Republican establishment and the big section of the ruling class is moving against Trump. But again, we cannot. It would be a huge mistake to sit back and think that the ruling class, that the ruling elite in our country, and the Republican establishment can be trusted in any way to stave off right-wing attacks or anything like that. And I just want to read. There was a New York Post, which is a right-wing publication in New York City, came out with an article that was talking about how Trump won the biggest share of non-white voters out of any Republican presidential candidate in the last 60 years. And this is a quote from that article. They say, it's yet unclear whether Team Trump will get a second term, but the path forward for the Republican Party is clear regardless. The GOP, which already has its strong base of support among non-college educated white voters, must learn to govern like a working class, multi-ethnic, multiracial party. And this is exactly the danger, that if the left doesn't offer an alternative to the corporate Democratic Party, that people of color and working class people will continue to move to the right, continue to move to Trumpism, whether, whoever is in office. And so it frankly, it doesn't matter that Trump is out of office. The threat of the growth of the right is still a problem because we still have all the crises presented by the capitalist system. And so the question on the agenda for us under a Biden presidency is not to let our foot off the gas, but continue full throttle ahead on the offensive for things like Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, defunding the police, canceling student debt, all of this stuff. And what does this require? This requires building a new party to the left of the Democrats, a working class party, and of course, building the socialist movement too.
Yeah, I think this is really, really important, like the way that this kind of fight back on the ground is the only way to stave it off, and also organizing and building a movement against. I think, again, this is something that we can relate to internationally. I think the whole point that you just made about how there's a situation, there's a crisis that's not just a crisis of coronavirus, it's a crisis of the capitalist system as a whole. And people are seeing it, people are trying to find an alternative to it. And right now, there isn't a left alternative. So they are moving to the right. And that is why it's so important for us to organize. And this is also why these protests on the street are so important right now.